Peter Hewitt, la-artistino. I'm back today with another colouring book review. We're going to look at Legendary Landscapes, which is a colouring book created by Hewitt, Radomski and Carey Wong and published by their publishing company Colourworth Inc., which is based in Vancouver. And of course, this book was printed in Canada. This book was crowdfunded through Kickstarter and it was a resounding success. This is a big, bold book, and I'll show you the size contrast between this and one of the well-known books, Secret Garden. As you can see, this is a good inch all the way around, or more than an inch all the way around. So this is one big book. This book comprises about 80 pictures, mostly single-sided, but with a few double-to-page spreads. A number of Canadian artists came together to produce this book. And there's a little bio in the back here about each one. The artists include the creators of the book, Hewitt, Radomski and Carey Wong, along with Kamala Melzak, Al Sayers, Adriana Drozdowski, and an illustrator and graffiti artist who goes by the handle Ratbath, and another contributor who wanted to remain anonymous, which is a bit of pity because their work is gorgeous too. Now, each of the artists have been credited to the individual piece of art that they created, which is always nice to know. I like to know the artists who created each of the work. I love this. It's more personalised then. And a bit about the quality of the book. The paper, I'll just go to the front page here, is beautiful. It is really lovely and thick. It's a smoothish texture. There's a little bit of tooth there, but it'd be perfect for grabbing a pencil. And I've been reassured that this paper is great for markers. So, as I do with all of my books, I started off with a bit of a test at the back to see how it would perform with different art materials. So I turn to the back page here, and here's my test page. I always like it when there's an area at the back which doesn't have a good picture on it, which I can just use to test my art supplies on. So here I have used, this is my Inktense pencils. Here I've used the Inktense just with water and activated it. That seems to have done all right. Inktense with a Tombow, which is when you use a Tombow marker, which is, well, this is a Tombow marker, but when you use the clear one to activate pencil or Inktense instead. Polychromos pencils. I've also tried my Prismacolors out and my Caran d'Ache Luminance pencils. They all performed beautifully on this. I've also tried the cheaper style pencils on there, the more budget conscious pencils, and they perform pretty well too. Now, also used some wet media. I want to see how it would handle watercolours. So I've used some watercolour paints here. And unfortunately not a great idea. There's watercolour paints there too. I've found that with wet media the water and the colour sinks right into the paper and it leaves it looking a little bit dull, so I wouldn't suggest this book for watercolours. Also, it does tend to bleed through the back, and there is of course the rippling as well, so not a great idea for watercolours, but had to try it anyway. Now with the markers, I've tried Tombows, which again are these guys, the Tombow markers, which are my favourite markers for colouring in because they have got the lovely brush tip, which is my favourite tip to use, and for detailing they've got the bullet tip as well. You can use any markers you like, of course. I again recommend just the watercolour markers because the alcohol-based markers will bleed through like crazy, as they always do. So the alcohol, that's your Copics, that's your Sharpies and your big markets and that style. But I think the watercolour ones, they do absolutely fabulously here. And if you see, there's a variety of different watercolour markers there. There's a test where I've used the Tombow markers over the pencil, the black pencil, to get a nice black background, just to see how that went in this book, and it went very well in this book. If I turn it over, you can see, if I hold it up, there is no bleed through whatsoever. The only bleed through that I got in all of this was just the watercolours. Okay, let's have a look through the pictures. Now, there are 80 pictures altogether in this book, not including the turkeys at the front. And most of them are single-sided, but there are some of these that are go over 2 pages for these lovely big panoramic pieces, but the vast and overwhelming majority of them are just on a single piece, a single side. Now these are printed with a picture on each side, so again that's why you have to be careful with anything that bleeds through, because anything that bleeds through from one side is going to of course affect the other side. Okay, let's just chug through the book. Here's the first front cover. As you can see, that's the front cover all coloured in, and that's the front cover without the colours. It's a good way to get started in the book if you're not quite sure where to start with colouring it in, is just to colour using the colours on the front cover, just to kick you off into the book. A big variety of different pictures in here. You've got just leaves there, butterflies, you've got wildlife. Tell you what, there is a lot of sunsets. You're not going to have to worry about running out of blue pencils doing the skies, because you're going to be dipping quite a lot into your oranges and your yellows and your reds for your sunsets, I think. Some eagles. There's a bit of fantasy sort of art there. That's a lot of fun. Some very realistic pieces here. There's different types of depth of ink drawing here, from the very detailed to the very simple. So you can choose what you like. Now here's one of the pictures I have already coloured in. This one I coloured in with Prismacolor pencils. I decided to give them a bit of a run out. And you can see the paper takes the Prismacolors quite nice. I could do quite a few layers on here without any problems. In fact, I didn't think I ran into any problems at all using the Prismacolors on here. In fact, when I made an error up here with what colour I was going to place on the water, and I decided to change it, so I rubbed out a pile, you can't even see where I erased it and put it over the top. The paper is very generous and very forgiving. Quite happy to recommend it for your coloured pencils. I'll keep going along here. I like to mention there is a Facebook group called Legendary, where you can see what other people have done with these pictures. The colourings, I've posted up a couple of mine on there, and there's a lot in their gallery that you can have a look and get some ideas about how you would like to colour these pictures yourself. Some of them are very fancy. I love this one. I'm going to do this one. This is this house, sort of dilapidated house, walking along on these big long spurred legs. It's and there's a tree with, I think there might be ants, or oh no, it looks like spiders in it, in a face. And then you've got these very architecturally accurate looking pieces as well. Okay, so you go from reality to something that's quite fancy. Something that looks very tech there. Kind of like a cyber landscape, isn't it, that one? And one thing I will say about this book is you've really got to work that spine. It's well put together, but it means the spine is quite tight. It is forgiving. I have sort of like bent it right around to get the pages flat, so you can do that. And I've had none of the pages becoming loose in here. So it will take a bit of rough handling to get the pages down flat, but you might find a little frustration to get right into that groove there, because there's no way you can get it flat altogether. That doesn't worry me, but it's something to keep in your mind if you're colouring it in and that's going to worry you. I suggest if you're colouring with pencils, you make them super sharp just to get into those grooves there. This is lovely. This is kind of like a Japanese feel to it, and this looks like jellyfish all swirling around. It's really fun. You've got whales levitating above the ocean. Levitating leviathans. I like this. Here's another piece that I've done. Now, in this one, I've decided to try a different technique. And what I've done with this one is I've actually coloured it in with for the most part, with a budget style pencils. I used the Faber-Castell Classics, and I put an undercolour down. I didn't make it very dense. It was a pretty just rough sort of undercolour. And then I went over the top with Tombow markers, and I found if you do that, you can make the Tombows look a lot smoother than if you just put the Tombows on the raw paper itself. It's a technique that you can try. I'm not sure if it would work with other types of water-based markers, but give it a go and see what you think. I found it made everything a lot smoother. Didn't make it perfect, but it made it a lot smoother and less blotchy. And I've used the black background tutorial, well, I've got it as a tutorial, but the black background technique to make the night sky here, and that is putting a layer down of a cheap black pencil, wax-based pencil, and then putting a Faber-Castell Pitt pen over the top, black Pitt pen, to make a really dark, intense night. And I have a tutorial about that on my YouTube channel, so you can go looking for that. Now in this picture as well, once I'd put down the tombos, I went back and I grabbed my Prismacolors and I put in shadows and highlights with the Prismacolors. So this area here was just this golden yellow colour, and I went in with a dark brown, sort of reddish brown Prismacolor and a pale yellow Prismacolor, and brought out the highlights and shadows to give the picture depth. I love this technique in this book, and I will definitely be using it again. I thought it was a great fun way to create very bright, vibrant pictures. And the thing to note here most of all is if I turn the page, you can see how dense that colour is. Now have a look at that. Not a single drop of bleed through. That page is perfectly white. This book is very suitable for markers. For all of that intense colour there, and no bleed through whatsoever. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. Moving right along. We've got some more realistic looking pictures with some very dense ink work in them. Flowers, realistic flowers, if you want to have a go at those. This is a real lovely Flight of Fancy with a little house and a tree stump. This is another one that I'm looking forward to colouring. Some giant flowers around a waterfall. Such variety in this book, it's so much fun. We're getting into buildings now and some urban looking art. If you want to try your hand on something that looks a bit more realistic and urban, this looks like a lot of fun. It's good to challenge yourself and try colouring something different, something that you'd never thought you'd have a go at. And balloons, more buildings. Okay, and this is a gorgeous, I love this one, it's like a Chinese garden, and this is more Indian. Now a word about this one, if I turn the page here, you can see here's another piece that I have worked on, and this was a lot of fun. I decided I will just go for broke and forget everything, all my usual caution, and throw everything on it and see what happened. And I'm happy with the result. The only problem is, of course, with me, I used quite a bit of wet media, and there was definitely wrinkling of this page. Not too bad, but there was bleed through, particularly when I used very wet media. I used a lot of water. I found that we got some bleed through. Now, this may worry some people who like to keep their pages perfect, and that's fine, but for me it wouldn't stop me from colouring this one at all. I know that when I put the colour over the top, the bleed through would not be very noticeable. So what did I use for this tiger picture? I started off with some Caran d'Ache Neo colours, which are these watercolour crayons, which I coloured in and then I activated with water. They work very much like watercolour pencils, only they're crayons instead, and I can get better coverage with them. And I use that for the sky and for this planetoid or moon right there. And that worked very well. Unfortunately, it's gives a little bit of a milky effect on this page. If it goes over the black, it will sort of soften the black a bit, but that's fine with me. The other thing that I used was my Inktense. In fact, most of this is done with Inktense pencils. They sat pretty well on this, except if I used an excessive amount of water. If I did use an excessive amount of water or coloured over an area that was still wet, that's when I got a little bit of bleed through. I also used on this something completely different. These are called, they are actually a watercolour paint, but they're twinkling H2Os, and they come in these little pots here. I've been dying for more watercolour colouring books to come out so I can play with those. I tried that on the tiger as well, and unfortunately that was probably the most bleed through of the lot. So use your watercolours if you want to, but you may be marking the page behind. And again, I used my little Uniball Signo white gel pen to put in all the little dots. So that was a lot of fun. I also went over the top with Prismacolors just to pick out some of the details and add depth. and spent a bit of time on this, but it was great fun. Anyway, let's continue. Here we've got some desert scenes. We seem to be grouped in theme here, so we've had sort of like the forest gardens, and now we're going into well, we've had the suburbia, and now we're into the desert. It's a nice Aztec. There's a couple of people in here. Okay, and now we're the last theme in the book is this space age sort of theme. So we've got a volcano. Actually, we're not quite up to that yet. We've got a Western theme here. There we go. Here's the space age theme. This is great for your skyscapes. There's a lot of sky there. You could make it multicolored if you like, or you could do the black background and dot it all over with stars. And you've got this alien landscape here. It's rather cool. And hold on. There we go. Another strange sort of spacey looking landscape. And the last picture in the book is some flowers. And that is my review of Legendary Landscapes. Now I will say that there has been a second book already out, which was another Kickstarter, which is Legendary Worlds. I won't go through that right now because I want to colour some pictures in here before I show you that one, but keep an eye out, that review is on the way. I hope you've enjoyed this little review, and good luck with all of your colouring adventures, and until next time, happy colouring! I hope you're enjoying any colouring adventures that you are currently on, and until next time, happy colouring!